That is such an annoying voice.
Well, I'm glad they do that now. Like they make it announced that it's being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
See, Salome is joining us.
Nice. Hello, Salome.
Hello, how are you? I will not be on video.
No problem. Very good. Thank you. How are you? I heard you're Kenyan as well.
I am. Are you?
No, I'm not. But I do know a few fellow Kenyans living in Switzerland.
Wonderful.
Yeah, great artists and musicians.
I'm in Kenya.
And Beverly is in Kenya, exactly.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Sasa Beverly.
I'm not Kenyan, but I'm in Kenya.
That's wonderful.
I like the
awesome.
clarification. Like, I'm in Kenya. I am not Kenyan.
Oh, man.
Yes,
Good to see you, Sasa.
So I guess we are good to start.
Cool.
Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to today's Zoom session, Spill the Beans, the GBC Café. Spill the Beans, the GBC Café is a coffee table discussion series for Democrats abroad, Global Black Caucus. Each month, we will invite you, we do invite African Americans and our allies from all around the world and from all walks of life to grab a cup of coffee, here's mine, and to connect with us via Zoom as we discuss hot topics and current issues. All of our chats are about an hour long, and we encourage you to share your thoughts on the topic of the day as well. So this is very loose. Everybody could join in, chip in, ask questions, and we never know which direction this conversation will go. And that is the greatest thing about it. Before we kick off today's event, allow me to lay down some information and a few simple Zoom room etiquettes. We are recording today's session. If you do not agree with being filmed, please turn your camera off. Please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking, and please type * hands up into the chat box so that we can cue people speaking, and please do not interrupt people mid-sentence while they are speaking. Democrats Abroad is a volunteer-driven organization. Help us register Americans from all around the world for the 2022 midterm elections. The easiest way to make a contribution is to visit www.democratsabroad.org/donate. And last but not least, I encourage you to share the knowledge of this session with your family, your friends, co-workers, or even a stranger on the park bench. I do that quite often, I do have to admit, and beautiful conversations happen along the way. If you're interested in providing a topic for the next coffee table discussion, please contact us at blackcaucus@democratsabroad.org. The Spill the Beans GBC Café will be hosted within the EMEA region, but also there's another pendant which will be hosted by my vice president, vice chair, vice president, that would be nice, huh? Vice chair, James Lockett, in the EMEA region. My name is Lidano Moore, also known as Jasmine Dine Moore, your Democrats Abroad Global Black Caucus chair and DPCA voting rep for Democrats Abroad Switzerland, and today's moderator. And joining us today is executive coach and mentor Sola Adelowo. Yay!
Yay!
There you go. Sola, so you are also living in Switzerland.
I am.
So tell me, why is voting in the US important for you?
Why is voting in the US important for me? Okay. I see voting as a civic responsibility that we all have. And even though we're not in the United States, I think it's important to remember that there are other people in the United States that look like us and that come from our life experiences. So we're not necessarily voting for our own benefit, but we're voting for other people who could also benefit from some of the experiences we're experiencing abroad. I think moving to Switzerland has just made me more aware of some of the benefits that don't really exist in the United States. I mean, they exist, but they're still a topic of conversation. So for example, the cost of healthcare. You know, I had surgery last summer and it didn't put me into debt. I was in the hospital for 5 days, and I think my deductible was like $1,000, maybe $2,000. That's for 5 days of being in a hospital, right? So when you think about healthcare being accessible, and that's just one example, or going to graduate school at a cost that is accessible. These are all benefits that I think in Switzerland we'll probably take for granted that they are accessible to many people, and in the United States they're not necessarily accessible, healthcare or education. So voting isn't necessarily about what I'm going to get from voting. It's also thinking about the greater good of society and other people who they may not realize how important some of these resources are, but it's going to make a huge difference in their lives. And so I vote for them as well. Plus, I also have a nephew. I've got cousins. I've got, dear friends with children. And they're just other people who I can't just think about myself. And that's the reason why, for me, it's important to be involved in politics and to take an active role in voting.
Taking an act is very crucial for all of us. Why don't everybody in the call today let us know into the chat box where you're from and where you vote? That would be quite interesting to know that. Sola, where are you from the US, and where do you vote?
Complicated question. So my parents live in North Carolina. The last place I lived before I moved to Switzerland was Indiana. So for about 10 years or so, 9 or 10 years, I voted in Indiana. For the last presidential election, I voted in North Carolina, since that's where my parents are, and that's where it's just easier for me to have a base. So I voted in North Carolina.
Great. We have Canada and vote in Missouri. Kenya votes in California. Boston registered to
Via
vote
Kenya.
via Kenya.
In NYC.
Exactly, New York City. And I vote in DC and living in Sweden. Exactly.
Okay.
So we have fellow African Americans throughout the whole world, and that is the beauty of it. You also mentioned that there's the bigger picture of all. What made you leave the US and want to stay in Switzerland besides healthcare?
Besides healthcare and education. Well, okay, so in 2016, I was still an entrepreneur, and that summer I had an experience. It was racial experience where I was just minding my own business in downtown Indianapolis, and some random dude with barely any teeth walks up to me and calls me a pretty nigger, and puts his hand on my shoulders and said, "You a pretty nigger." And I was like, I was so shocked. I didn't even know how to respond in that moment. And this happened within like 2 days of the Republican National Convention. So it was around June of 2016. I was shaken. Like it was jarring experience. And I remember throwing his hands off of me and just kind of walking about, because I was meeting a friend for coffee, and walking to the coffee kind of dazed because I was still in so much shock. And I didn't really talk about it because there was a topic I was taking care of. And then I remember driving home, and I called my mother and I told her, and she's like, "Well, why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you say anything?" And I was like, who's going to believe me? It's 3:00 in the afternoon in the middle of the day. Technically, I was not physically hurt, but emotionally, mentally, I was really shaken. And but I think in that moment, it was a turning point for me that things are about to get really bad. And then the cycle, the process of, okay, so I'm going to leave Indiana, but where am I going to go, started. And at the time I owned my own business, and so my clients, they were Swiss, they're dear friends of mine, and they live in the Midwest in Indiana as well, and they have a house in Switzerland. And I remember telling them that, I'm just gonna Airbnb for about a year and figure out where in the US I want to live. And so they were the ones who said, "Why don't you go live in Switzerland? We have an empty house there." And that's how I ended up here. So for me, I'm serious, that really was it. For me, it wasn't really so much what I could come here to get. It was just more of, I knew it was time to leave Indiana, and I knew, and I didn't know where, and an opportunity presented itself, and so I took it. So that's the story.
So did you ever encounter, and I actually know the answer to this question anyway, but I'll ask it anyway. Have you ever encountered racism towards African American or towards Black people per se in Switzerland?
Absolutely. So coming to Switzerland isn't like you're free from racism. I think it's just that the ignorance is different, if that's a way to qualify it, in the sense that, I've gone shopping and I'm standing there waiting for someone to help me. And I'm obviously standing waiting for help, and I don't want to be rude. And I've been ignored, and I've had to assert myself and say, oh, I need help. And then all of a sudden they hear the American accent and they're like, oh, madame. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've been standing here for like 10, 15 minutes, seriously. So there are things like that you experience. And I think too, that when it comes to applying for jobs or internships, which is what I started off applying for, you have to put your picture in your resume, and that's just like the Swiss standard, which just opens the door for all kinds of discrimination, because it just does. And so my first job in Switzerland was an internship. I was 39, 40 when I took the internship, and the person who hired me was American. And then the job after that, I was hired by another American. And the job after that was another American. So there's a pattern here. So it's not to say that, I don't know if it's necessarily racism as much as I don't speak German either. So there is that element as well. But I think that there is, in Switzerland, they can say, well, we didn't hire you because you didn't speak German, but there's a lot of ways that racism is kind of hidden. So it's not to say it doesn't exist. I think it happens. I feel it, but there's so many other ways that it's hidden.
So for many of people tuning in today, there's a certain sweet or a little treat or a little dessert, and it has a very particular name. And I want to see how you feel about it. So just to enlighten people a little bit, this dessert is a sugared, almost marshmallowy consistent that has a chocolate covering on top. And in German, it's called
Bergeschmutz,
Mohrenkopf or Negerkuss. And I grew up being called Mohrenkopf all the time, which translates into Moorish head, but actually it's meant a Negro head. And the Negerkuss is actually translated into Negro kiss. And so there have been a lot of discussions throughout the years, even when I grew up in Germany and in Switzerland, of people wanting that name to be banned because it is also, it's feeding into unconscious bias. I myself was like, they're idiots. I don't care about it. You just kind of brush it off like we do every single day. We brush off these emotions. But now within the last 2 years, within Switzerland, there have been many, many, many talks just because of this little sweet treat. And there are so many people that do not understand why it is so important to Negerballe. It's probably the same thing, exactly.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. So it's really not acceptable, and people do not get why somebody feels offended by it. How do you feel about it?
I think it is offensive because it does play into a level of, like you said, unconscious bias. I remember 2 or 3 years ago that I went to the what is the big festival? Fastnacht. And
Carnival.
and he had all the blackface, and I was so shocked. I was mortified. I was just like, wait a minute. And they had kind of like a mammy figure with the big butt, the teeth, the crazy hair, black face, and I was just like, how in the world is this acceptable? And at the time I was still in grad school, so I had a conversation with some of my classmates about it, and I asked them about the perception and things like that. And I remember them telling me that for them, Fastnacht is about satire, and it's about exaggeration, and it's about everyone being made fun of. And I said, I understand that, and I understand the satire piece, but can you see how, especially little kids, can go to school and pick and torment the little Black girl, and pick and torment the little Black boy, or the little Asian boy? And I'm just like, that's not, so after what, 5 days of seeing this as normal, how does that get, I guess, stripped away from either a child or an adult's mind, that that is not how you treat people that look like that? And no one, I mean, it doesn't happen.
And I mean, as you just said, it's supposed to be a satire and make fun of things and fun of people. And this is just the way how I feel. I mean, why is somebody trying to make fun of my ethnicity? That doesn't have nothing to do with satire. That's point blank racism out there. And also to elaborate this period of carnival that exists in Germany and also in Switzerland, it starts on November 11th and ends at Ash Wednesday. So that is like 3 months long of carnivals repeating, showing this. So that is really awful. So even though you fled the United States because you were, I'm going to say fled because it's you know, you made that very unpleasant experience there. But now you're in Switzerland and you still are challenged with racism. So why do you think your vote in the US matters and can make a change throughout the whole world again? Do you think that has an impact on us living abroad, living in Kenya, living in Sweden, living in
our
Switzerland?
votes, I don't, other than the fact we also got to pay taxes, you know, our votes don't really impact, I don't think they really impact our lives abroad. Again, I think we're doing it more because we are all still American. And I think that, and I think everyone, I'm not sure if everyone on this call would agree, but I think how we conceptualize what it means to be American completely changes when you live abroad. Because when you lived at home in the United States, everybody's American, right? And so the antagonism that we feel is like along racial lines, class lines, and things like that. When you're abroad, you know, you're American, you're Black, that's what the people see, then they hear your voice and it's like, oh, you're American. So there's a certain level of privilege that we do gain because we are Americans. But I think that our votes really isn't for us as much as I feel like it's for the fact that we still believe and we still have hope for the American experiment, because it's really what it is. And we also realize that there are a lot of people who are not in our position abroad that are able to experience what the value of being an American truly means. And we get to experience that, you know, living outside the United States, and we still believe in it. So that's why we vote, you know, like we vote because we still believe in it. We vote because we still care about a lot of people who are still at home.
Yeah. We just saw a nice comment in the chat section, the US passport power. Do you think the US still has a passport power?
It does, because I'm just trying to think of where I can't go without getting a visa. I mean, I didn't need a visa when I lived in South Africa for like almost a year. I didn't need a visa to go back and forth. Yeah. I'm in the Netherlands today and I don't need a visa. You can travel most of the world without a visa when you have an American passport. And that matters. It's less paperwork on your part.
But also going back to the question that I asked, if our votes matter to people living outside of the US, especially our host countries, maybe. I mean, I had the experience a couple months back or years back, actually, where we were talking about LGBTIQ topics and under the Trump era. And so people in Switzerland were like, no, that's not going to make any effect on us and so on. I was like, well, maybe you want to rethink that, because the US still is is guiding with examples on how the world should react on certain topics. So if the US does this, others will follow, the good and the bad. So
true.
that's why I think our votes do matter. I would actually like to know from the people in the call, either via chat or you could chip in talking as well. How do you think your vote living abroad matters? Maybe when you're residing in Kenya, for example. Why do you think it is so important that we drum all the people in Kenya together and help them get out the vote? Beverly, would you like to let us know why you think that's important?
Oh, yeah, I think I can't type fast enough, so I can,
Okay.
I can say, yeah, it is, I think it's extremely important. Basically what you've already said in terms of how the US influences other countries. I mean, if you have Trump in power, if you have Obama in power, I mean, I'm going through something in Kenya right now with the judiciary in Kenya, and it ain't fun. So, I mean, during the time that we had the ambassador appointed by Trump in power, there was no point communicating with the guy, as opposed to when Obama's appointee was in at the embassy, the U.S. ambassador. So it definitely matters. It definitely matters on what policies are being pushed, holding other governments accountable for certain things that the U.S. is supposed to stand for. So I think it matters very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry, you wanted to continue?
No, I was just.
Oh, sorry. I was
go on,
just gonna
Beverly.
say, there are some times when I mean, I've been in Kenya for like 36 years. So it's like, so depending on who's president, oh no, I am not American. Oh, you're American. No, I'm not.
No.
Oh, you're American. Oh, yes, I am. So yeah, it matters.
Absolutely. And especially the votes from abroad do matter, as also MJ is pointing out. The votes from abroad were the margin of victory. There you go. Sorry, I'm in France and then my head is a bit wired differently when I translate things in my head. Definitely were a margin of victory, and it did show, definitely. So are you, let's see again, MJ, remind me, are you a Georgia voter again? I can't remember. Take back the house.
No, I'm not. I'm a Missouri voter.
Yeah, there we go.
That matters in Missouri too.
And I should identify I'm actually white, but
no
I'm a
problem.
graduate
You're
of
welcome.
Tuskegee.
Okay.
I couldn't get a job in the US because I was a graduate of Tuskegee. None of us got jobs.
Wow.
I know.
So how does everybody, and everybody could chip in here, but maybe raise your hand or type star hands up. How does everybody feel about voter suppression? Do you think that is really happening, or is this something that Republicans think that Democrats are just making up?
That's going on.
How can we fight it? What can we do against it?
I tweet a lot.
Okay. Tweeting, that's good.
I bug my crazy Republican senators.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely happening. I think that it's unfortunate because voting is we've always, if you think about American policy and policy abroad, we've always framed voting as a basic human right. And then in our own country, we do all these craziness that minimizes people's ability to vote, which is just crazy. And it's completely counterintuitive to our identity as a country. But maybe that's my perception of our identity. But voting's always been framed as a human right.
Mhm. So letter or postcard writing is a way to fight against voter suppression. That's definitely true. How about talking to your neighbor who might be of a different political ideology? Do you think that would help? Or are these people too set in their mind? Or is it too
I think we're
scary or too dangerous?
I think right now we're so polarized that as a nation, I think it's just too polarized that to get to people, it's going to be, well, that helps you all win. It doesn't help us win. And which is just, it's two opposite ends of the pole that I don't know if we can necessarily, fight it that way. And probably more than anything, it's more of making sure the people who are going to be marginalized, that they have access, that they know how and when, and that we get ahead of it so that people have enough time to create a plan and all that kind of stuff. We can't wait for Republicans to all of a sudden have some compassion.
Mhm. And it's true, Beverly, we have to start somewhere. And there's something interesting that came across my desk just recently. I've learned of a huge amount of African Americans living, especially in the Asia Pacific region, who do not cast their votes. What do you think about that? How can we help them find their way to executing their right to vote? And in Africa too. Is that so, Dega? Why do you think that is so in Africa too? It astonishes me that people really, if they have the opportunity to vote, partially, of course, they don't know how to do so, I could imagine.
Yeah.
But why would you not want to execute your right to vote and make a change?
Jazz, if I could jump in, it's Adrian. I was trying to use the hand up function. Is that how you want us to?
You can, or the star hand up, yeah.
Hand it up. I'll put it back up. But I was going back to the, can we have the conversations question? And it reminded me of an article I read in O Magazine. I can't remember how many years ago, but it was sometime between 2016 and 2020. And there were people having these hard conversations in these communities. And I can remember one example, the person that you may talk to that is totally anti-immigrant, is going to go down to the border and shine the flashlight. When you talk to them, they're the person that wants people, they have a cousin who moved to the Netherlands, for example, and they had to do all this paperwork and immigrate and go get their visa and do all this stuff. And they're like, well, they want people to be law abiding. It's not that they don't want people to immigrate. So if you can get to the reason and then you go by, then you break down that layer and then get to the, okay, well, how do we do this in a compassionate way? There are ways to talk. I'm not necessarily a facilitator, but that was interesting to me because as an immigrant, we're immigrants. We know all the stuff that we had to go through to get to live legally where we are. Some people they don't see the desperation and see somebody trying to jump the line. So if you can figure out, okay, well, they're not, this is why they may be, you call it jumping the line, we call it fleeing persecution. If you can break down the conversation somehow to that level. So I do think there's hope in conversation if people are willing to talk, and then you can have facilitators shouting at each other isn't helpful. If you don't come to the table or to the opportunity with an open heart or actually wanting to hear the other person, it's not helpful. And why people don't vote necessarily baffles me as well, but I found out that there's many reasons, not knowing how. Voter suppression is a real thing. Voter suppression is a real thing. Some states make it hard for people. Also, being an expat for so long, people feel detached. If you live, I read something else, over 7 years, you're psychologically, don't necessarily feel attached to your home country anymore. So if people have lost that connection for whatever reason, parents have died, they left the States with a bad taste in their mouth, for whatever reason, if they don't have that connection to vote, normally if you can make somebody a connection, they'll follow through. And another reason I think is not connecting people the power of their vote. and connecting people to, so a lot of people don't believe that their vote makes a difference. So even if they cast their vote, they don't think that it makes a difference. So they don't necessarily want to go through the motions. So I think I know I'm appalled when people don't want to vote, but it's so multi-layered. So I try to find out why and then help them. And then I also learned that if you ask somebody to vote, they'll vote. It's more relational voting works. It's a thing. If you ask your friend, neighbor, cousin, soror, whatever, even your nemesis, okay, let's fight it out to the polls together or whatever. If you ask somebody to vote, they're more likely to say yes. And if you help them, they're really, really more likely to do it.
There's also an interesting thing that is more and more getting of greater importance. It's creating events like how to react as a bystander. So because I've heard from many, many people that during the past election, they really had issues just communicating with their friends, their family, their neighbors, because they had different opinions and they were watching, they were either shocked, they couldn't do anything, or they ran away, or they feared for their life. And the conversation just got intense. And there needs to be some training on how people should communicate on these topics again. And also, I do want to point out here, that was Adrian George talking, who's also on the GBC team. And she is celebrating something very, very great. Adrian, do you want to enlighten everybody on the call what you're celebrating just now?
Oh,
Speaking
Jazz,
about
I don't know if I'm celebrating. No,
well,
no.
it's
You
great
mean
being
the standing committee thing?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, because I didn't know if Jazz was setting me up too, because if he remembered my birthday's Halloween, so anytime I can, we're in October, so I am like celebrating the whole month. But I didn't know if that's what he meant for the Halloween. But no, yes, I was. The DNC, the Democratic National Committee, met. The fall meeting was a couple weekends ago, I guess, and one of the pieces of business was electing in the at-large members and the standing committee members, and there are 3 standing committees: credentials, rules and bylaws, and I think there are 4 committees: finance and resolutions and bylaws. Woo. And I got our chair, Candace, for Democrats Abroad, asked all of our DNC members, we're 8, with half a vote each. Like a lot of states, we get 4 votes. It's based on population, and we split them since we come from 4 corners. It helps us have the best possibility to have at least 4 people in the room when we do meet, because when we do meet, we're the only ones who care about Americans abroad. So I know I'm getting a long way around to what Jazz asked me to say, but one of those committees was standing committee, and I put my name in and I got elected to be the chair, put me in as a nominee. So, and they say, like it comes from the White House, but those it's not for people like me on credentials. Like if you see it or whatever, that's got to be for like the at-large people, the at-large members. But anyway, so I'm representing Democrats Abroad in the Global Black Caucus as a member of the Credentials Committee. And I can tell you all what that means when I find out.
Yay.
Thank you, Jazz.
Love it. Thank you very much. Good. See, this is what I like about the Spill the Beans, the GBC Café. Yes, Pierre, you may add something. You have your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in. I agree to what Adrian said about voting. That
Hello.
some people don't vote.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going.
Hold on a second.
Someone needs to mute.
Let me just mute them directly.
I can give you my screen.
Sure. Did you get that? Were you able to get that
Hold
email?
on a second.
I sent that before the meeting.
MJ, can you please mute
I just
yourself?
changed all of
Oh, I muted them.
the bracketed areas
Oh.
and sent
Maybe
it
they're on
on its
mute.
way.
There we
Okay.
go. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I just wanted to add to what Adrian said about, the importance of voting and why it matters, and that that some people do not vote simply because they just don't know how to do it.
How to
And
do it.
I remember not so much in 2020, but especially in 2016, I was, phone banking in France because I live in France, and a good number of people, they wanted to vote, and they were so glad, to have someone on the phone who could actually guide them through the process, because they just did not know how to do it. And, like going to votefromabroad.org, they had no idea, right? So they felt very happy about it, and they maybe did not always think about voting. But once they got this phone call, asking them if they were aware of, the process, they were so happy. Or others, they were frustrated because they knew how to do it, but they had problems. So it just proves that sometimes, a little bit of help, to what Adrian said, that when you offer help, you can almost be sure that it's gonna work out 100%.
Absolutely, Pierre. And may I ask, while you were doing the phone banking, have you experienced a lot of resistance of people that you called, or was it a very open discussion?
Okay, so that brings me to an anecdote where I remember one woman, and I remember she was from Alaska. Well, she votes in Alaska, and she really did not want to vote for Biden whatsoever. Okay, so she starts telling me that, because of this, there was this Tara Reid allegation, and, Biden is a sexual predator. She's not going to vote for Biden. She's not going to vote. Okay, so then I started saying, okay, well, you don't want to vote for president, fine. But voting for president is one thing. Voting for, the House and Senate is another thing. Okay, so, and then I started saying, okay, well, the president works with Congress. We need to keep the Congress Democrat, and try to take back the Senate and all that. And then she kind of got interested. She said, okay, she wasn't really 100% convinced, but she was like, okay, well, I might think about it. You're probably right. But one thing for sure is I won't vote for Biden. So I don't think that she did vote. I mean, I don't know if she voted or not, but, it's just, like, every election is important, but you can still vote even if, we're lucky enough to have that, because in the US, because many other countries, it's just president and that's it. So it just shows that you can vote, but even if you don't want to vote for the main kind of thing, right, the main person. So yeah, that's but she was very resistant, to voting when I first got her on the line.
And as Adrian is pointing out, you had the conversation, and that is really something important, because even though you don't know what she did at the end of the day, you might have triggered her to still vote anything. Maybe it was, something else she voted on, but still, you made her vote. During the last elections, John Lewis gave us, not during the last elections, but John Lewis gave us a quote once. The quote is, "The vote is precious. It is the most powerful, non-violent tool we have in a democratic society, and we must use it." Do y'all still think that it is a non-violent tool today?
Yeah. It's still a non-violent. It's still a way to assert our opinion and our values. It's non-violent in the sense that, if you think about what happened January 6th, and you think about what happened in Georgia, if you think about, those folks were acting a fool, and we were just sitting there like, wow, I think the stark contrast of voting made a huge difference in the outcome in Georgia, with the contrast of the craziness on January 6th. You just like crazy do crazy, and we didn't have to say they were, being crazy. They just did it, and you don't have to explain it. And it was very violent. And to think that the impact of voting caused the violence on the other side, that was it just shows that there was an act of nonviolence that incited a lot of ignorance or stupidity, I don't know what you want to call it, to act crazy.
Point blank crazy. Adrian, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was going to say, to add on to what Sola said, she said, you asked her like a yes or no question. She was like, yes. And basically, I was going to say yes, because if it wasn't such an important nonviolent tool, they wouldn't be working so hard to suppress us, suppress the
Right.
vote. That would never have been a tactic. It would have never just been for white men with money from the beginning, if voting wasn't the end all of how you have power in this country, you know? So we know that that is still our most important nonviolent tool, getting people to the polls. And beyond that, of course, you know, the elections have to be free and fair. And that's why voter suppression has got to be a thing of the past. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Anybody else have an idea on it? Degal
Can
or
I just say one
MJ?
thing? I'm
Please.
sorry, this will be my last thing for the hour or however long we're here. Because it came up before when someone was talking, and I was an extra on a movie, because I'm here in DC. I'm about to go back to the States, to Sweden, and they're telling the story of Bayard Rustin, who actually organized the March on Washington. Everybody always thinks about where King gave the speech, the I Have a Dream speech. You know, Bayard Rustin organized that whole event. So the Obamas have a deal with Netflix. Their production company is doing his story. And I was just a marcher. They call us, we're not supposed to say extra, background actor. And we were holding those signs, the protest signs, and it's the same stuff we're holding now. Right to vote. I want to vote. We're holding those same signs in 1963. We're doing the same thing when we're protesting right now. The same exact thing. So I meant to say before it came somehow, some point, but it's mind blowing to me that in 1963, yeah, but it reminds me, and I'm going to paraphrase her, hopefully not badly, but Coretta Scott King said every generation has to fight for civil rights. So they didn't take it, you know, because some people are like, oh, they didn't do it right. They didn't finish it. It's like, I believe her, every generation, it's a threat, every generation.
Absolutely. And do you all think that it is getting better for African Americans to vote, or are we going down a dark path back again towards pre-civil rights movement? How do you feel about it? Oops. Beverly, you have your thumb up?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe being a person of a certain age, I'm like, oh, hell no, it cannot go back. Now, but what is going to be done? I'm not quite sure. I guess maybe I don't know enough about the mechanisms, but I am a bit conflicted as to why the White House does not seem to be doing enough about it. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just mind-boggling to me that these voter suppression laws were not shut down the moment they were put out.
Yeah. Can you hold your thought there for 1 second, Waverly? Because that is a very good point that you're addressing right there. Because unfortunately, Sola has to catch a plane. She's on the jump, on the move. And I just wanted to use the opportunity to say thank you very much for being
Thank you.
today.
Thanks for having me.
Talking.
You all are having great and important conversation, and keep having it. And hopefully we can actually get some action out of our conversations. They turn into things for us to do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And have
everyone
safe
enjoy your
journeys.
evening. Okay, bye.
Bye. Okie dokie. So back to you, Beverly, because you did raise a very, very good question there, especially when we saw these appalling pictures that happened on American soil while we were viewing how these Haitian immigrants were treated. Why do you think, why hasn't the Biden administration tackled that yet? 42 yet, let's say it like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it feels like they're dancing around. Why are you dancing around this? Go straight for the jugular. I don't know. I don't know. It's almost like they're afraid of something. No, you're in the White House because we knew you weren't afraid of tackling these things. I mean, but it's like I don't know. I just don't know. But I'm I'm feeling very agitated that, you know, I mean, every day in the news, it's oh, Trump is trying this and that, and you know, January 6th, and oh, you know, but Bannon's not answering this. Why are you even talking about it? Arrest him. I just don't get it.
Mhm. So, because I'm me personally, I'm giving them a bit of a benefit of a doubt there, because they do have to clean up a big mess that Trump left behind, and sometimes some processes aren't that easily done or redone or rectified, say like that. So, do you think that excuses the missing of tackling that issue a little bit, or do you say no, it needs to be done right away at this moment?
No, I think they need to be at the forefront of showing the American people how important voting rights are, and they need to. Yeah, I get that there's a lot of mess, and there are many things that they need to unravel, but I think this is such a crucial issue that and even you know what they say about it also matters. So you may not be able to do something today, maybe you can do it tomorrow, but today you can use some decisive language to combat it, which I'm not hearing, or maybe I've missed the point. I don't know, but it's so frustrating.
Interestingly, because I recently was invited to one of the White House calls when the incident just happened, and our questions were brushed off very easily. I'm just talking about foreign affairs topics, but everybody who was there constantly asked about how these people and their superiors are going to be held accountable for that. We have not until now heard anything about that. I might be mistaken. If anybody else knows more than me, please enlighten me, but I have not heard anything on how they have actually been brought to justice.
So that would be what I'm talking about.
Great. This is what I love about this Spill the Beans, the GBC Café, because we could talk about anything. The topics go any which way. And yeah, I love that. So, Dega.
Jazz, can I say something?
Yes, you may.
Because I know I shouldn't say guilty, that's a wasted emotion, but that I'm personally like not up in arms about, you know, modern day slavery that we know is happening, you know, right now in parts of Africa, or, you know, what's happening in Haiti, and, you know, or just how, you know, I didn't join any Black Lives Matters protests where I was like, I'm not doing it in a pandemic. You know, people did it, you know, so people do things. I wasn't one of those people, but I think we have an opportunity. So if we can craft something concrete, and if we want to just say you need a stronger language, or you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, that we as the GBC can then give it to me. I take to the DNC Black Caucus and then say, Virgie, you're the chair of the DNC Black Caucus, take this to the chair. Jamie Harrison, you're the chair of the DNC, the Democratic National Convention. You have the ear of, you know, I missed our time, the chance to make it a resolution. We just had our meeting. I could have made that a resolution. So we have the opportunity to do things like that. And as any DNC member can bring a resolution, traditionally Democrats abroad, we like to have our DBCA voting members. Jazz is one. I'm not sure anybody else is on the call. I'm one. Beverly's shaking her head, to like during our global meetings to pass a resolution like that. Then I go back and say, then we all go back to the DNC and say, our whole, you know, we're all over the world and this is what we want, you know? So there's a lot of ways we can do it. So let's do this. I signed on to Black Lives Matter movement resolution 2 meetings ago. I'm never the one to bring these through. Help me, you know, let's bring something through. Democrats abroad can lead the way on something like that. So absolutely.
That-
I honestly don't know where we are on that, and I'm ashamed because you're like, do you know what's going on? I don't know what's going on that. I don't know. We should know,
Yeah.
and I don't.
We should know. That's the big point. We absolutely should know. Well, what you also just mentioned is during the pandemic, we probably did lose a lot of contact, a lot of personal contacts to family and friends who also are out there fighting with us, for our equality. I don't think it necessarily was diminished very much during the pandemic because we did all use Zoom and WebEx and everything out like extensively. Do y'all think that took away the power or our Black force, let's say it like that, to speak up for our issues, or did nothing change? Are we being heard as much as before? Maybe Salome, Degas, or Pierre? Okay. Well, I personally, yeah, Degas?
No, what was the question? I mean, I didn't.
Do you think that things changed during and still after the pandemic, while we're still a bit in it, regarding the visibility of people fighting for African American rights and issues?
I was actually back home in Arizona during the pandemic, so I was participating in a lot of the Black Lives Matters movements, and actually one of the co-founders went to my university. But the point is, I think the generation of today, the youngsters of today, have the ability of actually magnifying it using the technology that I think, had we not been in a pandemic, we wouldn't have had that kind of spreading the news and being able to mobilize the way we could have been. And we would have, and we did. So to the point we actually, I think, we're nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, like the movement. It brought it to the forefront where we had allies like MJ, who's here, and other folks that are realizing that not only Black lives, but like many other lives, brown lives, and many other people are being mistreated and not getting the same fair rights, and that some people are taking their entitlement and privilege a little bit too far by just calling cops. And before, we all knew it, like people would say, but we have now a camera. So, and if it wasn't for, what was it, Central Park Karen and all these other Karens, we would have never seen it in real life and how it's done. And and the other day it was the paraplegic that was dragged out of the car, who consistently was being,
on his hair, through his hair, yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
paraplegic,
Yeah.
So, and it's not going to solve anything today, and I don't know if Biden and Kamala can solve anything in the first 4 years. I think that's a little bit too optimistic, but I think like Adrian said, I mean, those signs are still up there. We have to just keep pushing it through. It's part of fighting for your rights. Like I'm a human rights lawyer, so it's part of continuing the fight. And until you feel like you are at a point where, it's being followed through and it's being respected, fulfilled, and being actually honored, yeah, we all get our ballots now, but I come from a state where I come from Arizona, where they gave our ballots to the random cyber ninjas. And now all those machines that we paid for, the taxpayers paid for, have to be thrown away, and we have to pay for new voting ballot machines for this November. And the cyber ninjas came back with the same news. Biden won and Trump lost. So it's, if we don't keep pushing through and keep you know, fighting for informing people how to vote. From my state, we have everyone. We have Native Americans that are being oppressed. We have Asian Americans that are also being oppressed. We have Native immigration with also Hispanic Americans being oppressed. We have a more or less a little Black community, not as many as others, but definitely the others are more than the whites. And that's the fear of Arizona, and immigration, like the Haitians and others, is bringing that fear alive. And that's where coming full force diplomatically, I think, would be a catastrophe for Biden and Kamala. It wouldn't work well for them if they just came out with, I think they need to be a little bit strategic about how to protect the Haitian immigrants and the dreamers and all the immigration problems we have. You know, that's just.
And they most probably should address the long-standing history that negatively impacted on Haiti, which resulted through actions that the United States of America actually did within the past. So that is something that should be addressed way much more out there. Thank you very much, Sega. Adrian, I saw that you were raising
And Canada.
And Canada too, absolutely. You're right.
What did I do?
You raised your hand in between, I saw.
No, I think I was
No?
giving Vega like a thumbs up and like
Okay.
giving her, agreeing with her. So at least that's what I meant to do with something she was
Okay.
saying.
Great.
I promise silence.
Nobody has to be silent. We silence nobody here. Great. I think we're about just almost hitting the 60-minute mark here. This was a great first experience. Thank you very, very much for joining in, for chipping in, for being the voice of our African-American people and allies. Again, if you're interested in providing a topic for the next coffee table discussion, please just contact me at blackcaucus@democratsabroad.org. The next one for the EMEA region will be on December 16th, which will be posted as well. And the next one in the AP region, so if you have some friends out there that live in Asia Pacific, for them, it's going to be on October 30th. That topic will be announced this week as well. And then I'll be very happy to post it. Thank you all very, very much. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. Oops, sorry. There we go. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you for hosting it.
Bye.
Bye. Nice to meet
Bye.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
You too.
Uh-oh.